Most of us already know the basics of being healthy. Eat better, drink more water, move more, sleep properly, stop overeating. But knowing what to do and actually doing it are two completely different things. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not here pretending to be a health guru, so please remember this when you comment. I'm just a man on my own journey with health and nutrition. I'm learning as I go along. I'm testing what makes sense, what works for me. We are all different and different things will work for different people. I'm here to share the information that helps me understand my body better. Because sometimes the message is not new. Sometimes we've heard it 100 times before, but then one day we hear it from the right voice. One day we hear it in the right way, at the right time, and something finally clicks. And that is the purpose of this channel. Not perfection, not preaching, just learning out loud. I don't present as perfect and hide my mistakes. I'll share my mistakes so hopefully people like you can learn from them and not repeat them, or gain some understanding as to why they make them, and hopefully make health feel clearer, more practical and more human. So if the message resonates, if the delivery helps, or if this is the kind of content you want more of, like the video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who might need it. I'm Leon Figures, and I hope you enjoy this video on some of the health benefits of drinking water. I've looked up some credible sources and provide a brief summary of what I found, but I encourage you to look at them yourselves and apply your knowledge to your health journey. Most people think water is just something you drink when you feel thirsty. That is true in part, but there is so much more to what water actually is. According to the Mayo Clinic, between 50 and 70% of the human body is comprised of water. Just pause on that for a second. More than half of you is fluid. That means water is not some optional healthy habit. Water is part of your biological infrastructure. It is inside your blood. Water is inside your muscles. Water is inside your organs. Water is inside your brain. And it is inside your cells. It is part of the transport system, the cooling system, the chemical system, and waste disposal system that keeps you alive. So when people walk around all day, barely drinking anything, then wonder why they feel tired, foggy, sluggish, suffering from headaches, bloated, constipated, or low energy, they are often ignoring one of the most basic biological truths there is. Your body cannot function properly without adequate water. Now, medically, dehydration can be defined as a state in which the body loses more fluid than it takes in, leaving it without enough water to carry out normal physical and cellular functions. Again, dehydration begins when the body no longer has enough fluid to perform normal physical and cellular functions efficiently. That is a much earlier point than most people would think, because your body constantly loses water, whether you realize it or not. You lose water through sweating, and you lose water through breathing. Every breath that leaves your body carries moisture with it. You lose water through urination. You lose water through bowel movements. Fluid is leaving you all day, every day, through multiple channels, whether you are in the gym, at work, walking around, sleeping, or simply sitting at your desk. And if your intake does not replace those losses, things begin to change internally. Blood volume starts to fall. Electrolyte balance begins to shift. Cells begin to function less efficiently. Nutrient transport becomes less optimal. Waste removal becomes less effective. Temperature regulation becomes less efficient, and your internal operating environment starts to lose stability. That is what dehydration actually is. It is not just dry mouth. It is not just thirst. It is a gradual decline in the efficiency of the systems that keep you functioning. That is where most people misunderstand hydration. They think thirst is the initial sign. It often is not. Thirst is frequently a latter warning sign that the body is already trying to get your attention. By the time you feel noticeably thirsty, there is a decent chance your body has already begun operating in a less than ideal state. That means dehydration is often silent at first. It is not dramatic. It is subtle. It creeps. It is a reduced efficiency. This is why someone can say, I feel fine, I'm not dehydrated, while their body is already compensating behind the scenes. Now there are levels to this. Mild dehydration can occur just 1 to 2% body water loss. 1 to 2%. That is not some catastrophic fluid loss. That is a relatively small drop, and yet even at that mild level, studies show it can already contribute to fatigue. It can already contribute to headaches. It can already concentrate to poor concentration. It can already contribute to dry mouth, reduced physical performance. Think about how many people are operating throughout the workday, struggling to focus, feeling low energy in the gym, and assuming they need more caffeine or more motivation, when one of the simplest explanations may be that they are mildly dehydrated. That is how deceptive this is. You do not need to be severely dehydrated to perform below your best. Mild dehydration is enough to start lowering the quality of your biological mechanisms. As dehydration becomes more moderate, the signs become more obvious. This is where people may begin to experience dizziness, dark urine, rapid heart rate, noticeable drops in energy levels. The body is now working harder to maintain circulation, maintain blood pressure, and maintain internal balance while operating with less fluid than it once. You are effectively asking the body to do more with less. Then severe dehydration becomes a genuine medical concern. Now you're talking about confusion, very low blood pressure, fainting, organ strain. This is no longer just feeling a bit sluggish. This is the body struggling to preserve basic function. But here's the important distinction. People hear the word dehydration and instantly imagine the severe end. They imagine somebody who has not had water all day, someone visibly parched, someone in obvious distress. That is not how dehydration commonly shows up in everyday life. You can be mildly dehydrated while functioning. You can be mildly dehydrated while working. You can be mildly dehydrated while talking. You can be mildly dehydrated while at the gym. You can be mildly dehydrated while driving around, running errands, answering calls, and carrying on with your everyday life, and simply not realize that your body is lacking water. Because the human body is adaptive, it compensates, it keeps you going, it tries to maintain blood pressure, it tries to maintain circulation, it tries to maintain mental clarity, it tries to maintain temperature, and it tries to keep papering over the cracks. But compensation is not the same as optimal performance. Just because you are still functioning does not mean you are functioning well. This is the trap. People assume I'm still moving, therefore I must be fine. No, you may simply be operating below peak efficiency and calling it normal because the decline happened gradually. This is why hydration matters far earlier than people think. We should not be treating water as the same thing we remember only when we are desperate. We should be treating water as one of the most fundamental raw materials that the body needs to keep its system stable, efficient, and high performing. Because when fluid intake is poor, the body does not always scream immediately. Sometimes it drops hints through tiredness. Sometimes it makes subtle suggestions through headaches. Sometimes it alerts you through brain fog. Sometimes it nudges you through reduced gym output. And sometimes it speaks gently through the flat, drained feeling people cannot quite explain. And very often, these early warning signs are simply this: you are not getting enough water to run the biological systems properly. One of the simplest ways to tell whether your body is getting enough water is not by asking yourself if you feel thirsty. It is by paying attention to how often you urinate, because your bladder is giving you a running commentary on your hydration status all day long. And this is where most people have no benchmark whatsoever. Some people barely go to the toilet 2 or 3 times in an entire day and think that is normal. Others are constantly running back and forth every hour and think that is normal too. So let's remove the guesswork and let's use actual British medical guidance. Using NHS continence guidance, the medically accepted normal for a healthy adult is roughly 4 to 8 urinations in a day, with 6 to 7 being the common average and no more than once overnight. That is not one random opinion, that is a range consistently repeated across multiple UK bladder health sources: Whittington Health NHS Trust, Torbay and South Devon NHS Foundation, and Royal United Hospitals Bath NHS Foundation Trust all point to the same basic conclusion. A healthy adult should typically be urinating around 4 to 8 times per day, averaging about every 2 to 4 hours and generally no more than once during the night. That is the clinically safe, medically defensible benchmark. Now, why does this matter? Because this gives us something measurable. Hydration suddenly stops being this vague instruction to drink more water and becomes something the body can actually report back to you. If somebody is only urinating once, twice, maybe 3 times an entire day, if the urine is dark, if they are holding urine many hours at the time, there is a very good chance that they are commonly underhydrated. Why? Because the body is conserving fluid. The kidneys are not being given enough incoming water to comfortably flush waste on a regular basis. So output becomes less frequent and more concentrated. The darker urine is not just cosmetic. The darker colour often means the urine is carrying a more concentrated waste per litre because there is less fluid available to dilute and flush it. So when people proudly say, "I never really need the toilet," that is not always a positive sign. Sometimes that is your body quietly telling you that fluid intake is too low. On the other side, if somebody is urinating 10 times a day or more consistently, that can suggest a different issue. That can sometimes be excess fluid intake. It can sometimes be too much caffeine irritating the bladder. It can sometimes be bladder sensitivity. And in some cases, it can indicate metabolic or urinary issues that are worth paying attention to. So the answer is not simply more and more and more. The body generally likes a steady middle ground, a regular output, regular flushing, regular elimination, not dehydration at one extreme and not constant bladder irritation at the other. Another NHS Continence service gives a very useful practical benchmark. It states that you should not need to go more often than every 2 hours, and you should not be waiting much longer than every 4 hours. Think about that in practical terms. Your body should be emptying bladder several times a day, steadily across the day. Not every 30 minutes, not once every 7 hours, steadily. That tells us the kidneys are filtering, the bladder is filling, and the body is handling fluids in a healthy rhythm. This is important because urination is not just about getting rid of water. Urination is one of the body's main waste disposal mechanisms. Every time your kidneys filter blood, they are removing excess salts, urea, toxins, metabolic byproducts, and waste materials that the body no longer wants. Urine is not merely yellow matter, it is a waste transport system. So when urination frequency is low because fluid intake is low, flushing becomes less efficient. The body is essentially trying to do the same cleaning work with less transport fluid available. That is why concentrated urine often smells stronger. That is why dark urine is often a dehydration warning sign. And that is why going too long between urinations can be a clue that the kidneys are operating in conservation mode rather than comfortable filtration mode. So let's strip this down into a very clear bottom line. Credible UK medical consensus suggests the minimum healthy norm is around 4 times per day. The typical healthy average is around 6 to 7 times per day, and the upper normal range is around 8 times per day. And nighttime urination should generally be 0 to 1 time per night. That gives you a practical daily self-assessment tool. You do not need a blood test. You do not need a fitness tracker. And you do not need to guess. Your bladder is already feeding you hydration information every single day. The question is whether you are paying attention to it. Because if you are barely going to the toilet, producing dark urine and holding it for long stretches, there is a strong chance that your body is not receiving enough fluid. And if your body is not receiving enough fluid, every major system that depends on that fluid is now working under less than ideal conditions. So one of the easiest ways to ask, am I actually hydrated, is not wait until you feel thirsty, it's to ask a much simpler question. How often am I actually going to the toilet? And that is what my body is trying to tell me. Now let's talk about something people almost never connect to water properly. Water is one of the most basic biological requirements for your body to function properly. It supports blood volume, it supports kidney filtration, it supports bowel movement, it supports appetite control, it supports oxygen transportation, it supports headache prevention, it supports immune defense, it supports energy, it supports skin function, and it supports metabolic efficiency. And when you do not get enough, your body does not always collapse. It quietly becomes less efficient. That is the danger. Sometimes dehydration feels like thirst, but sometimes it feels like tiredness. Sometimes it feels like poor concentration. Sometimes it feels like dark urine. Sometimes it feels like constipation. Sometimes it feels like headaches. Sometimes it feels like poor gym performance. Sometimes it feels like bloating. Sometimes it feels like dull skin. Here's the question. Have you actually hydrated properly today? Because your body is not asking for magic. It is asking for the raw materials to do its job. I'm Beyond Figures. and I'd really like to thank you for making it to the end of my very first video. This is part 1 of 8 on my series on the health benefits of water. Please like the video, please subscribe to the channel and share it with somebody you feel needs to hear it. You get one body, fuel it properly.